Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and science of running and the stuff that we put on our feet. Today at the roundtable, we have Dr. Matthew Klein, the founder of Doctors of Running, and Dr. David Salas, and myself. I am Nathan Brown. We're excited to be with you all today. We have a pretty fun episode today. We are going to be talking about what some of the best non-running workouts are for runners, but we're also going to be talking about a lot of the shoes that we are testing right now. And from what I understand, Matt is in like a 95-degree garage right now.
It's 95.
So, hopefully
it's 95 outside, but I don't know what it is in the garage. But I have, thanks to our wonderful supporters at Scratch Labs, some of the strawberry lemonade hydration mix that I hope is going to keep me going. But if I slump off screen and lose consciousness, just keep going.
We know why. So we don't need to be worried, right? Now, so I'm excited to chat with y'all. It's been a little bit since the three of us have been recording together, so it'll be fun to talk through a bunch of things. But we do want to talk about what we're testing now. So this is our in-for testing segment where we talk about the most recent shoes that we've been testing. We'll break them down a little bit, give some initial impressions, some initial questions that have popped into our mind. And this segment is fueled by Scratch Labs, which is a performance nutrition company and hydration company that's built by athletes for athletes and by people who understand science, which makes it really fun as well. These are real ingredients, no junk involved. And if you want, you can use the code Doctors of Running for 20% off your first order. So let's talk a little bit about what we have been testing. I have the most shoes that I've ever brought to one of these segments, or like anytime we have like a list. I'm feeling like David. And David, since I told you how many I have, I added one. So I'm pretty excited.
Just had to one up it. Yeah.
It's because I've been running more, which is a fun thing. So,
and we're going to follow up on this because David and I just talked about this. I want to give you a shout out that you completed a half marathon not too long ago. That is awesome and a really, really big milestone. So very excited for you. But because you have so many shoes, I think you should go first.
I suppose I can do that. I can start with the half marathon, I guess. So I did not race it. I ran it with some friends, but it was my first time covering that distance in probably over a year. I've done a couple 10-milers over the last couple months and been feeling pretty good. So it was really fun. 5 of us ran it together. We held hands across the finish line. Not a joke, like literally held hands. It was really cute. We had a lot of fun. But in that run, I ended up choosing the Super Blast 2, which is not one that I'm going to talk about for testing. But I just wanted something that was super reliable for me to cover a long distance. So I had to pull that out. But I've been testing, for the most part, a shoe from Skechers. It's the Aero Burst. It's their more maximally stacked shoe. People may disagree with what I'm about to say, but from the testing experience and kind of where it fits for what Skechers is doing, it's kind of like their replacement for the Max Road, except it's significantly heavier and still cushioned. I think the biggest difference for me from the Max Road, which never worked for myself, and this is the type of geometry that it has. I found that the Max Road had a much more significant bevel that I would always have to kind of like run and get over. And it almost felt like there was this bolus under my midfoot. And usually, like, this shoe also has arch fit. Usually the arch fit was a lot more obtrusive for me in my like medial side of my arch, but I didn't have that issue with this one. So I've taken this on one 10-mile run and then another like hour 15 run, like 8 miles. So I've been loving it for kind of slow cruising miles. I did a little bit of a workout in it. It's definitely not made for going fast. I found that it was best for like easy, long, consistent miles. Anything where I was pushing pace, it lost whatever bounce it had. So like at the slower paces, it feels nice and cushioned, a little bit of rebound, not crazy propulsive, but just a little bit of a bounce from the foam. Once you go faster, I felt like it didn't give that anymore. But I like it for cruising, like it for easy miles. It's got a nice wider platform, so it's pretty stable. The arch fit was not obtrusive. It's got the Hyperburst Ice compound in it, and I think it's a pretty solid shoe. I don't think it's going to win any awards for me, but I'm going to be writing the reviews in the next couple of days because I have more than enough miles put in on it, which does say something about it for myself, that it worked for me for the most part, but a little bit slower. Okay.
I will say really quick that hearing that review is going to break Bach's heart because the Max Road is near and dear to his heart. So we'll have to
I know he loves
wait till the review comes out to break that to him.
It is a running shoe, but not one that I personally use for running, but it's the Flylight 6 from Topo. I've been using this one more for like walking and lifting. And for me, it's not like a pure lifting shoe, right? It doesn't have that super hard platform like that's wicked stable and really grounding you. But it is a little bit firmer of a foam. It's wide enough on the base. It's got a lower drop, really secure midfoot, good fit, lets your feet splay. So I've been liking this shoe for lifting here in my basement. And just kind of like walking around and doing stuff like that. It's a little bit of flexible. And if you're somebody who kind of like wants a shoe that could walk, lift, and do a little bit of running, this would work great. Because the platform, I think, is like 25, 15, or maybe even 15. I got to look back, sorry, but that'll be in the review too. But Flylight 6 has been good for kind of like lifting. So it's been classic topo fit and a lower, flatter platform. One of my favorite trainers has been the Rebel 5. It's the first Rebel that has fit me. And I just feel like it's one of those that just is so smooth back to front, like no hitches in the transition for me. Our full review's out on this one, but I have still been grabbing it and getting some runs in for it. And I like it for recovery runs probably the most, but it's light enough and has a little bit of pop to it. So you can push in this thing. So that's why I like some of that versatility. And then the last one that I have the least amount of testing in, but I have started it in it, is the Neo Vista 2 from Mizuno. And all I'm going to say about it for right now is something that I'm disappointed in. So not that it's a bad shoe, but my disappointment is in the changes in the upper for myself. It's a little bit stiffer, a little bit thicker, and a little bit looser. And because it's a sock-like fit, the sock-like fit does not fit my foot as well as the previous one. The previous one is a little bit thinner, a little bit more stretchy, and a little bit like more snug. And so I like that it was snug, but it stretched and held my heel a lot better, whereas I get a little bit of slippage in the new one. But again, I've got one very short run in the Neo Vista 2, and everybody's foot is going to work different with this kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Can you hold up your Neo Vista? The Neo Vista 1? Oh, that's a cool color.
You like my colorway?
I didn't get that colorway.
Yeah. They sent me mine
like existed.
Yeah, I got mine sent to me like 8 months after it released. But yeah, I liked running it. So that's all I got. What do you guys have?
David, you first.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, does either of you have the Skechers Aero Spark on hand?
I can grab it. Do you want me to grab it? Start talking. I'll grab it.
Sure. Yeah, so the first one I'll go is the Skechers Aero Spark. I mainly grabbed things that I was going to be running in for the following week, but we just finished up the miles on that the other day. That's been one of the shoes that I've been doing my daily miles in over the last week and doing some shorter kind of workout type stuff in it. There we go. We got them both on there. So I love how like you got up and like got it, and
Matt just had it next to him.
Yeah, he just had it the whole time.
Somewhere on the shoe wall. I'm like, where did I put that again? Oh, okay, got it.
He was holding out on you. He's like, I'm going to wait till he gets up, and then I'm just going to grab it.
Couldn't find it.
So Skechers Aero Spark, kind of like a lightweight trainer. Dare I say it's almost reminiscent of like Razor 3-esque, but it's heavier and it's a little bit more structured than those models. So Razor 3 was like 6 ounces. I mean, it's kind of hard to compare things weight wise to that shoe. This is more in the 9 ounce range. So it's got a decent amount of shoe on it. That's more. Some of that's going to be the rubber. You have that Goodyear outsole on there. That's a little bit thicker. Platform though, it's kind of moderate stack. It's like right around that 35, 36. I think it's 36 in the heel. And it's what, 5-6 millimeter drop, 30 roughly. Yeah. So kind of like middle of the road on those things. And it has the Hyperburst Ice midsole in there as well. And then it has a carbon fiber H plate as well in there. And even though it has the carbon fiber plate, it still has a little bit of flexibility to it as well. I wouldn't say that it's super stiff, but it does have a little bit of spring in that forefoot when you load it. And I found that I've actually really enjoyed that shoe. Like, it's something I wasn't quite expecting, but it's versatile and it can do a little bit of everything. And it has just enough cushion to kind of hit some of those longer efforts. And it retails at $130, which I feel like is pretty darn competitive for what it is.
Yeah.
So I've been really enjoying it. The fit's a little bit more snug. It feels kind of more performance oriented, but a little bit more training friendly. So it's not quite like a pure performance trainer. Like, it kind of like dances on that line a little bit. So I've been enjoying it. I just didn't grab it because I finished my miles on it, and that review will be up within the next couple days, probably. Got to write that up. But the other one was the Metaspeed Edge. Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. Just finished writing the written review on that. Did a video on that. So I don't have that on my hand. That's the stuff that we did the last week. So coming up into the next week, I got to one up Nathan there. He brought 4 out, so now I got to talk about 5, right? Like that's how we do this. So looking at like the next week, the one that I'm excited about, maiden voyages tomorrow, is going to be the Topo Athletic Vista. So trail running shoe, wide base. It's pretty structured throughout. This thing is not going to be a speed demon, but it feels really nice. Like it feels like it's built really well. And I think it's going to be one of those shoes that you could probably hike and run and do longer efforts in. And traction seems really good on it. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be good. And then for daily road miles, we're going to be looking at the Rabbit Dream Chaser. So want to get that out. Matt's making faces, but it was sent to us. We're going to review it.
It's just not agreeing with me.
It hasn't agreed with me either.
Yeah, but I mean, we get things, we write things, right? It's for the people.
I'm curious to see what like your thoughts, especially being in Santa Barbara, and you got a decent number of miles on the first one. Curious to hear how it goes for you in terms of changes and things like that, upper fit.
Yeah, I think the little bit I have on the upper, the midfoot's still snug. The first one was really snug on me too, where I didn't quite love it. But I mean, generally speaking, it feels all right. We'll see. And then for like speedy stuff, we've got the SC 5 in from New Balance. So that should be a fun one. I've tried it on. I just haven't run in it yet. It fits really well. It locks down super well. It's got a snug fit throughout, but just enough space in the forefoot to kind of give you some, swelling accommodation, stiff carbon plate. The fuel cell feels like it's just a little bit more structured than it has in the past. It doesn't feel super marshmallowy. And I like that. I think it actually feels really nice. And then the outsole's super grippy. Like they basically put like little lugs on that thing and you can feel it right away. Like once you stand and start walking around in it, you're like, oh, wow, this thing wants to eat up the ground. So who knows? It might be a good trail shoe. We'll find out.
Matt, what you got?
All right. I have a couple interesting ones, although 2 of them you've already talked about, but I'll bring up the one that we haven't, is the Reebok Float Zig. They're the new version of this. I was a little apprehensive at first. The last kind of series that Reebok did just didn't really agree with my feet. And so I was like, you know what? I really want to throw this on because we do have a history with them. They were some of the OGs to partner up with us. And so I was like, let's see where we're at. It's not a bad shoe. I like the foam more than last year. I think there's a little bit more cushion. What I'm not getting out of them is a lot of responsiveness in terms of like, it's a heavier shoe. It's not very responsive, but it is very cushioned. The foam is nice. Walking is really nice. Running slowly is really nice as long as it's recovery pace, but just a little heavier. But the fit is actually pretty nice. A little bit more volume, a little bit more width that I've actually enjoyed. Just hard also because, I mean, every time I use this, it's usually with a recovery run while I'm pushing a stroller, so extra exhausted there too. So, but it's been an interesting shoe thus far that I'm not disappointed in, just going, oh, okay, that's interesting.
When that shoe arrived, it always gives me flashbacks to like the original Float Rite Energy, which at the time with what the foam was, it was fantastic. It was and it was always like $100. And I still have my 10K PR in the original Float Rite Energy, and I don't have my pair anymore, sadly. But I just loved that shoe, and then I loved some of their other foam compounds that they were using with, like, we've talked about the Panthea before. That was, I think, our first ever Doctors of Running podcast was on the Panthea.
I think it was,
if I'm remembering right. But I think that was the topic of our first, which is pretty fun. So there's a lot of fun shoes from Reebok. I think I've actually ran in that one too. And I think that it's fine, but it just feels flat. Like there isn't a whole lot of, like you said, not a whole lot of bounce from it.
Other shoe that I'm testing right now from a training perspective is, like Nathan said, the Neo Vista 2, which is I've been looking at the specs and like stack height's not supposed to be that different from the original. It feels so much taller, so much so than the original version. Ironically though, Nathan, I'm having the exact opposite experience with you, where the upper is fitting me a lot better than version 1.
I like the upper of version 2 better.
I do understand what,
and maybe it will for me when I run.
I'm almost wondering if the reason for that is you have a narrower foot, right?
I got a pretty
to normal
basic.
Yeah, I have a little bit like more sensitive feet, which is well known. Where like I like a little bit more width, a little more volume. I feel like this is doing well, but it still has enough structure in the upper that it like sits well and has been very secure, which I didn't quite like with version 1. So this shoe has got some bounce to it. It was like kind of a little bit scary when I first put it on. I'm like, whoa, where are we? But yeah, slowly breaking it in. It doesn't feel as fast as the original. Like I cranked out some really good workouts in the original one. This feels more like softer trainery type of ride, but there's still enough bounce to do something like that. But it just, very different from the original, despite not having that different specs. So more miles on this. And then the last thing, David already brought this up, the New Balance SC Elite version 5. I actually have full testing miles. I got over 20 miles on this already. I got an easy run and a long up-tempo run, which getting a long run on a super shoe is very rare for me because usually I don't trust them for long runs, but did a 10-mile steady state with Regina and one of my students actually from George Fox and took this out. And I'm really glad I did because Regina was pushing the pace. We finished at like low 6s. And I'm really happy with this. It is not the same as the original. It's very different. I would say it's more aggressive while still not being the most aggressive super shoe on the market. The plate is definitely stiffer. That toe off, there's a lot, but it's a little bit firmer, definitely snappier underfoot. Surprisingly, despite the narrow midfoot, not as unstable as I was expecting. I got through it, but just it's still, in my opinion, one of the more friendly super racing shoes on the market, but it's much more aggressive and very different fitting and riding from the previous shoe. So more miles to come on this. But by the way, the heel hasn't come off yet. So I thought
that's actually
I thought for sure when I saw this, I'm like, this is toast. I'm going to get through 2 runs. It'll be done. And so it actually held on. So we'll see how many more miles we can get out of this.
That's great. Well, we got a lot of stuff for testing, which is fun. And before we get into our main segment where we're going to be talking about different training options and workouts that are non-running based that are really good for runners, people have been asking us, how can I work with you or can I consult with you or whatever? And just a reminder that is something that we all do. It's not a part of Doctors of Running, but we do that individually. So Andrea does that. Matt does that. I do that. And David, I know you're seeing people locally and could be pushed towards this if enough people are wanting it from you. But just remember to look up our individual handles, or if you reach out to Doctors of Running, we can just remind you where you could talk with Andrea. Like Andrea does consultations, kind of like one-time consults for cycling or running. Matt does a little bit of that as well, especially if people are in Oregon or California. And then for myself, we're accepting people for like run coaching. So if you're wanting that from a physical therapist, you could reach out to us at Pioneers Running. So just a reminder that stuff exists. But let's get into the fun stuff. We are going to be talking about different types of workouts that we think are best for runners. We're hopefully going to be able to give some very tangible stuff. But before we do that, we do want to lay a foundation of some of the complexity that goes into exercises and what we think about exercise from the lenses of physical therapists. But hopefully, again, we'll boil it down to some of our top 3 type workouts for runners. But David, could I kick this over to you and just start giving us a big overview of what this realm is and talking about workouts that are outside of running and what kind of things we can consider?
Yeah, I mean, people have written textbooks on this stuff, right? So it's going to be kind of tough to cover all of it in a short period of time. But I think when you look at, a lot of people refer to it as strength and conditioning, like the world outside of your given sport and how you choose to augment it with either strength work, conditioning work, plyometrics, yada, yada. Agility work, all that stuff kind of goes into it. And I think you have to look at your given sport and how it complements what you're doing and what your goals are. And so I think there is a very clear delineation that needs to be made first. So I think if you are, let's say, running for fun but you are in the gym more than you are running, you're going to focus more on the gym stuff, and the running is just going to be something that complements the gym stuff, right? Now, most people that are listening to this podcast are probably more on the running side of things, right? So running's going to be your main activity. So you're going to be looking at this and how these types of activities can complement what you're already doing from a running standpoint. And in theory, either make you faster, better, or more resilient. It really just depends on what your goals are. Most people want all the above, and so just working on developing some of those things. And so when we look at that, usually people think of the weight room first. So we'll start there. You've got many different types of exercises and different things you can do to work on building strength, both through the lower extremities, upper extremities, core, all of the postural muscles to kind of help keep you going and build some endurance. That's going to be one place to start. There's another lane of that is looking at plyometrics. And when we look at running, it's really just a bunch of controlled falls. You're kind of taking one step, falling into the leg the next time, absorbing that load and springing off of it. And so that springing part of it, that's what the plyometric nature of exercises work to facilitate or improve. So it's basically taking a quick contraction where you're like absorbing it, slight latency period, and then springing off that thing. So a lot of different kinds of jumping type of activities, power development type of things. And then also like different things like working on absorbing that load. And so we'll get into a lot of the stuff later, I'm sure. But another one's like eccentrics, really slowing down certain movements, making the tendons kind of load in a slightly different way, and really working on that absorbing piece so that you can actually turn that over to the running side of things. And there's been some good stuff, out there kind of showing some improvements with running economy, like on all of those types of fronts. You also have like the cross training world. You've got like cycling, swimming, pretty much anything you could think of, rowing, doing any kind of activity that isn't running, and that still counts. So it's really just a whole world of just doing anything outside of running that still counts as activity. But most people usually think of it from the strength and conditioning side of things. And there's also stuff I'm not really going into, but there's also the whole functional training side of things too, where you have like your sled pushes and toes, you have your kettlebell swings, you have different kinds of things that are facilitating different movement patterns to accomplish a goal of some kind, but they may not be quite as direct or specific as some of the other exercises that are out there, and more of a complement or a group of like grouping multiple together.
Yeah. So what I take from that is that there is this unlimited universe of different types of training and exercises that you could put into your routine. And the reality of today's episode is that we're not going to be able to say everybody should do this specific part of this universe. That's not how it's going to be able to work. That's why working with somebody who knows the science behind all this stuff and can implement it within your training can be super valuable to you, particularly given things like your age or given your injury history or other things that they're able to see within your mechanics or whatever it is. So before we go further, I want to pitch this question to you, Matt. How do you think that our needs for this sort of training that's not running, so maybe the strength and conditioning, the lifting side of things, how do you feel like that changes over the lifespan? Do you always need the same kind of thing, or are there things that we're seeing that may change what we need at different times in our life?
That's a great question, since I'm literally writing research and manuscripts on that right now. Very complex question. I think some of these things are it's always good to work on being a well-rounded athlete. Obviously, in a perfect world, if you have unlimited time and energy, you'd be able to do all this stuff. But unfortunately, that's really not how it works. So we have to be very realistic that there's only so many hours we can run. There's only so many hours we can cross train when, have school, work, life, everything, what have you, that we also have to balance stuff out with. We're not professional athletes, and this is not a discussion on for the professional athletes and athletes. Listen to this, where we're talking to both them and everyone, right? So you're going to be bound by what time you have to do this. So when it comes to being efficient, when you're younger, it'll vary depending on like, hey, how much mileage can you handle? What's the volume you can handle? Should you be doing strength training when you're younger? Absolutely. It's one of the few things we know that might influence injury risk. It's one of the few things that we know does actually, outside of training, that can improve running economy. It is a nice to have. A lot of people get away with it. There's lots of people who are like, I never strength train. They still perform really well. Great, cool, awesome. As you get older, I would argue it actually becomes much more important to strength train, because not only are you looking at running a performance and economy and all this kind of stuff, you also have some like biomechanical and some muscular changes and body system changes that are happening. Like as we get older, it is, unfortunately, if you're not training, it is normal for us to lose muscle mass. It's normal for us to lose a greater ratio amount of strength relative to that muscle mass and a greater amount of power relative to that strength loss. So the greatest thing that will offset that, and actually no matter what age you are, not only can you slow that down and actually, but you can also reverse some of those changes to a certain degree. Like that's where as you get older, it becomes way more important to make sure that you're lifting, you're doing heavier stuff. And that doesn't mean you need to be at the gym for 8 hours. It means you need a good like 10, 20-minute routine, maybe 2-3 things that you're lifting heavy, low rep, like decent set, but power and strength development as you get older becomes, it's not an option anymore. As a young person, it's like, we really encourage you to do this, but a lot of people get away with it. As you get older, because of the changes that are happening, that is where things are going to really change. Like this is no longer an option. You absolutely need to be doing this in whatever form, at a gym, at home. There's lots of resources, things you can use, but you got to be pulling some weight. The same thing can be said of like, and just talking to David's mentioning cross training, that also might change as you get older. Some people and this is actually the same for younger people. Some people can handle a lot of mileage. Some people can't. You need to go, what can your body handle running volume wise? And what can you continue to build elsewhere if that time is available? I know a lot of masters runners who are, being very smart about their training, going, you know what, I can't really handle 7 days a week of running, so I'm interdispersing other training to support what I'm doing, and they're still running really fast. So strength training as you get older is absolutely non-negotiable. As a young person, it's encouraged, but you might be able to get without it. But that's, as you age, some things change.
I think the other thing that I think about through the lifespan is what types of injuries happen at different ages. So when we look at injury prevalence, we see younger people not primarily, but a higher ratio of bone stress injuries and bone-related injuries. As you get older into the master's age, you're looking at more tendon and soft tissue-related injuries. And that's where I think that you could tailor some of your training. If you have a limited amount of time, if you're younger, if you're a high school, college, if you're in that age range where you're still skeletally developing, that's where some plyometric work is maybe going to be where you should spend your time to give the bone stimulus and multi-directional movement, all of that kind of jazz. And when you get older, you're thinking about how do we load tendons to basically, no matter what stage you're in, it's how do I improve tissue resilience for the tissues that I need to be more resilient in my phase of life. So that's one of the things I think about. Matt, something popped up in your head.
I would disagree that I think as you get, I would agree with you actually. So as you're younger, plyos can be really helpful, with that. As you get older, I really think you need both, because one of the things we lose is power development, but you also need the heavy, slow resistance training, because you're also thinking, hey, my tendons are changing as I get older. And like, we got to keep that resiliency, build that stiffness back, because you can lose that. But you still need to be working on power generation. That doesn't mean you do 1,000 hops, but even some double leg things once or twice a week. Just, can I jump? Can I do this a little bit? I'm going to encourage, but I agree that, the younger individuals can get a lot more out of like the intense hopping and things like that, just for appropriate loading. I would also, at a younger age, I feel like you can get away a lot more with double leg stuff, because double leg heavy weighted exercises tend to be a little bit better at building bone compared to single leg stuff. So again, just thinking about what are the tissues that are changing? You're totally right. Younger athletes tend to have a little bit more high risk for bone stress stuff, a little bit more knee stuff. Older individuals have a little bit more hip and Achilles, calf, ankle kind of stuff. And so tailoring that to what the risk factors are for your age, or just you as an individual, knowing your history, I think is really important.
Yeah. And just to say this one more time, when you think about bone building exercises, you can look at plyometrics and heavy resistance training that's getting like 85% of your max. So we're talking heavy stuff, lower rep. The next question, David, that I have for you is a little bit similar question of like, how do things change depending on this factor? But now the factor is what type of athlete you are. So let's say you're somebody who's doing shorter distance, like 5K or even like mile stuff, compared to someone who's doing, and that's still long. I know. I just like don't think
200 meter.
Yeah.
We're still talking endurance distance athletes, not sprinters.
Yeah, distance athletes. Yeah. Yep. So short distance, short endurance distance stuff. So yeah, probably down to like a mile.
To 5K.
Yeah. So you're shorter in quotes there, versus somebody who's doing ultras. How do you conceptualize what's valuable in that universe of strength training or strength and conditioning for those different people and what they should consider?
Yeah. So 2 very different events, right? So when we look at the 2 different events, Andrea and I did a podcast on this actually a little while back, but talking about different energy systems and how that plays into this. And you're going to be creating a lot more lactate. You're going to be doing a lot more power when you're doing some of these shorter distance events. And you have to be able to have some resilience in the musculature for those types of things. But you need power. Like that is kind of the root of what you're doing. And so I would argue like, you really got to have good tendon stiffness and you got to be able to spring off those legs if it's going to be 800 to 5K. And I think, especially with 5K, when you see like some running economy benefits, even just in the 1 to 2%, you can see people make swings sometimes of 10 to maybe even 30 seconds sometimes, depending on where their PRs are. And you see some of these people make these breakout seasons. And the only thing that changed was just some weight training, right? So I would say like heavy, slow resistance and plyometrics mainly for the shorter distance crowd. If I really had to pick and be specific, when we start looking at the ultra crowd, they're working endurance all day long. So I don't really think there's benefit to doing anything outside of running and lifting. but to be clear, like, if you're doing 2 back-to-back long runs on a weekend, which is not uncommon for a competitive ultra runner to go and just drop, 30 to 45 miles in 2 days, right? Like that can very easily happen. You're doing plenty of endurance and, I won't say damage, but musculature. You're breaking down muscles and trying to build them up from that end. You're not going to get that much out of doing massive, long, low weight, high rep sets. It's just not going to give you that much bang for your buck on that. So for
which
them,
feels counterintuitive at first. Right. At first encounter of that idea, it's like, oh, but I'm an endurance runner. I should do endurance strength training, and you're kind of pushing against that notion. Keep going. Right. That probably may hit people like, wait a minute.
Yeah, that might actually be a big shock thing. Where to us, we're like, well, duh. And then other people are like, wait, no, please elaborate.
Yeah.
You're doing plenty of it already. Your musculature is tired. You're just kind of getting it more tired and you're not really stimulating. You're not giving a big enough stimulus to actually generate enough growth. And now you're just adding tired on top of tired. Like you'll still get some muscular gains out of it, but you could do it better. And so when we look at the long distance stuff, Matt was alluding to it earlier, but kind of doing the heavy, slow resistance training, you can do, 3 sets of 3 to 5, at a really high weight and some rest in between and get a massive neurologic stimulus to your muscles, to your tendons, and give it a different way of generating a stimulus to actually grow and use it differently and build that connection. And you would be surprised at how much easier running can feel even for long periods of time when you're doing that, because now you have something that's kind of in that semi-maximal realm that makes your submaximal efforts, which is what you're normally doing, feel even more submaximal. So that is one way to complement that. I think another thing too, especially with the ultras, a lot of them are trails. So being quick on your feet and being able to react, I think is still important. And like so whether it's like side to side hops or different kinds of balancing exercises or proprioceptive elements, like doing things that make you react or do something differently. And if you have a buddy, you could even have basic commands of when they say X, you jump left, or they say Y, you jump right, or forward or back, things like that. And then now you're having to react to make a decision while you're doing it. It sounds kind of silly, but it trains your brain to actually make decisions based on another stimuli besides just your eyes, or something that you're having to react to something, which you have to do quite a bit in the trails. So you're practicing the actual art of the running and the trail running and the ultra running, all that stuff you're doing. This is just complementing those things. Like I was saying earlier, none of it just doing it one time is going to necessarily make things better, but over time you can actually start to see some improvements in how you react, how you move, and how you respond from a metabolic standpoint as well.
Great. And Matt,
does that answer the question?
It does. Matt, did you have something? You kind of raised your finger.
Yeah, I'm glad David and you did kind of mention this as well. I've always I've gotten into arguments with some of my patients that I've worked with that are ultra marathoners going why would I not train in the weight room to do high rep things? And my opinion, David Base alluded to this, and some of the evidence out there is that you're already getting a massive stimulus in that area. If we do more of that, I can't promise you're going to adequately recover, because there's weight training, strength training, all these other things are adjuncts. Your running is still your primary method of training. Your weight training should support that and not take away from the recovery time. It's the same thing why I've always suggested for a lot of athletes going, if you're going to strength train, it shouldn't be that long. You shouldn't be spending more than 20, 30 minutes doing a lot of the stuff, because if you start going longer, unless you're doing specific rehab, that's going to be a little different. You start going longer, you might start digging in to, especially if you're performing and you're getting ready for races, stuff like that, you're going to pull away from your ability to recover adequately. So programming this appropriately, understanding like the overarching amount of volume of like total work, or exercise is really important. But I would definitely agree that like for ultra marathoning, because you're doing so much, you're trying to recover from repetitive loads. Unless again, rehab's going to be different. If you're preparing a muscle that has been injured to go back to that makes sense. But you want to create a different stimulus that supports what you're doing, almost like cross training. And so you're not going to get that same stimulus with high repetition work that you are with the low repetition, high weight stuff that's going to build the tendon resiliency, bone resiliency, muscle resiliency. You don't still want to replicate that. I get specificity of training, but this is where this varies. I will also say I'm also with David. Like typically I don't do unstable surface training, because we know that from that training that's where specificity training really works. Where if you do unstable surface training, you're not on a stable surface, you're not going to get that carryover of skill. Whereas a lot of trail running, if somebody's had ankle sprains, things like that, I'm like, I think like David mentioned, proprioceptive stuff or some stuff on an unstable surface isn't a bad idea, because that's where you live and breathe. And so, I think people are very surprised to go, why are you not giving me a ton of reps? Why are you giving this very unique stimulus? And the goal is to go, I want to give you unique stimulus, because the higher repetition stuff isn't going to get us the stimulus we want, because you already do it so much. And it's different than like your mile or your 800 or your 1500, your 3K, 5K athlete. Just because there is so much more power involved. Yeah, you're definitely going to have to work on that higher level power, really pushing some weight, just because of it's a little bit more specific. But when you have that much time on your feet as an ultra marathoner, I think it's really important to have a different stimulus. And I've always questioned myself going, is it just because I'm biased toward, some of the things that we know make a little bit better changes for bone tissue health, or am I missing the specificity training point with some of these athletes? So just a struggle that I have.
That's good. The last thing that I want to point out on this topic is, Matt, you recorded an episode with Rich Willie a while back now. And if you have not listened to it, I highly recommend you jump back there. They go into a big conversation about very specific exercises for long distance. He was talking about some of his work with ultra runners, but he gave very practical advice for how to get the most out of your lifting without being in the gym for a long time. I distinctly remember him talking about 10 minutes in and out for some of these things, because you just want to get what you can without taxing your system more than it's already being taxed, because you're already you're like redlining the whole time of like, where can I push the envelope but not go too far? And so you don't want to waste your time in the gym burning unnecessary calories. So he gives some really practical advice where in a lot of ways, less is more. It's just, what is that less that fits into your routine?
I will also say for the clinicians out there, if you're interested in running and you're treating runners, if you have not taken Rich Willie's course, you are doing yourself a disservice. You should go do it. He is a phenomenal speaker and also a phenomenal educator and clinician. So you should definitely just want to shout that out.
That's a good idea.
He's also a great human being. This is off topic, but when we finished that podcast, we kept talking for another 2-3 hours afterwards. He is awesome.
That's cool. All right. So we're going to go into the last part of this podcast where we're going to try to give really specific practical advice, really talking about our top things that we would say runners should do. If you had to pick something, we may all have slightly different takes on it, and that's the point. But before we give this specific advice, this is not prescriptive for sure, because as we said at the beginning, everybody is going to have different needs. The second thing is that when we start to talk about these specific topics like lifting, or if you start to talk about nutrition, or if you start to talk about sleep, sometimes it feels like, oh, this is the thing. This is the silver bullet. It's not the silver bullet. This is a big part of the puzzle. And if we lift, but don't do nutrition to back it up, it's pointless. If we lift and we do nutrition, but we're not sleeping at all and we have high stress, nothing's going to work. So it's all part of the big puzzle. Just remember, it's way more nuanced, but we are going to go into some specifics. So we're going to talk about like our top 3 things that we would do. And maybe your just like leading philosophy when you think about guiding people to doing some sort of training. Who wants to start? Who's ready to rock? Go ahead, Matt.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to cheat. So remind me of the question again, because I was like, I got it in my head. I was thinking.
Just go ahead. Okay. Just whatever.
So like top 3 things, top 3 or 4 things you want to do. So set up a little program.
Yeah.
So this is not prescriptive. And obviously, as Nathan said, if you have an injury or rehabbing, this is going to be totally different. But I'm also a really big fan of keeping this as simple as possible. And here's how I'm going to break this down. There are 2 major phases of running. There's a third one that I'll address in a second, but 2 major phases. There is the shock absorption phase. That's where you land on the ground. That's where you're dealing with forces, absorbing them, handling that stuff. Then after the second phase of that, there's a middle phase where you transition between the 2 of these. But the second part of this is propulsion. That's where you are taking a lot of that energy. And David alluded to this earlier, that a lot of running is the shock absorption phase, and then how efficient you are at turning that energy into propulsion, right? So there's that propulsion phase where now you are pushing off the ground. The final phase, I know I said 2, the swing phase where you're recovering the limb, that becomes really, really, really important as you start to get faster and faster and faster. But for my purposes, I'm going to talk really about the loading response and propulsion phases. Now, the reason I'm starting with this is that's kind of where I base a lot of the simplicity of this stuff. So first thing, from a loading shock absorption standpoint, I think either some variation of a squat is really good, be it a split squat, which I'm a really, really big fan of because it puts you in a little bit of that running position, right? And all this stuff, by the way, is pushing some heavy weight, except for the last thing, right? Getting some good amount of weight, some I'm a big fan of kettlebells because they're easy to have around. They're not that expensive on Amazon, or some heavier dumbbells to the point that you're not able to do more than like 6 to 8 reps. I would prefer it in that 4 to 6, but I want this to be in the strength realm of work and like higher set. But a split squat, a step down, any of those 2 things are going to be really, really good because they're going to work on hip control, quadriceps, hip extension, all really, really good things. Now, if you have a little bit more trouble with pelvic stability, the single leg version is going to be great. If you just need to build strength, the double leg version with higher leg is going to be good. But some form of a squat is going to be a really, really good thing. I just prefer either the step down for me personally right now or the split squat. The second thing I'm going to go through is the propulsion phase. So I really think you need to think about some form of a calf raise in whatever position, and it needs to be heavier. It needs to be weighted. I'd really prefer if you did it single leg just because of the inherent intrinsics that get worked a little bit more if you do that position. But you got to load this, and you got to load this through a full range, especially the higher up you get, like higher levels of like greater levels of plantar flexion to your toe pointing. Not only do you get Achilles calf, you also get a little bit of post tib in there as well as you slowly supinate at the end range, although not everybody does that depending on pathology. But that would be good because you want to maintain, because your calves are the primary propulsive muscles in running, regardless of the speed that you go at. Your hip extensors kick in a little bit more at higher speeds, but your calves are one of the most important propulsive things, and maintaining a healthy Achilles and healthy calves is really, really important. So single leg calf raise of some kind, be it normal height off a step. If you don't have insertional Achilles tendinopathy, you can have the ankle range of motion, something along those lines. The other 2 exercises are going to vary a little bit. I'm really big fan of step ups for the hip extensors because the step ups one of the best exercises for that. And best is a relative term because actually that study was EMG, and there are a lot of limitations with doing EMG stuff. But the step up is a great climbing activity that works the hips and the knees and the lower extremity in a way that gets those hip extensors kicking on. But, the last one is going to be some form of a jump. And right now, my research is looking at what's the difference between a vertical and a horizontal hop. And I don't have enough. I have a pilot study that I'm saving at the moment. So we'll reveal some of the results of that in a little bit, because I need more subjects, and 10 subjects is not enough. We got the groundwork, which is great, but I don't know if it matters at this point. You need to be jumping in some way. And you can't just jump into, no pun intended, to single leg stuff. I would encourage people to think about a progression of going, can I do a double limb jump? Can I get comfortable with this? Okay, can I do a single leg, like just a little mini hop? Can I get better at now a single leg generating some power? So the final thing is going some kind of hopping or power exercise, slowly progressing to doing a little bit more height or a little bit more distance, depending on what your goals are.
Great. David, do you want to go next?
Yeah, that was 4 things, by the way.
I know. But I did say I'm going to cheat and do 4. There's a little overlap with the step up and like something like the split squat and stuff like that. You could easily modify the split squat to be a little bit more hip dominant, but you are totally right. That was 4. Some kind of shock absorption, some kind of propulsion, and some kind of hop.
Yeah. I'm just trolling, just because I always do. When we look, I'm gonna look at it from 3 basic categories, very similar to Matt. I think we all kind of think semi-similarly, so you'll probably hear a lot of overlap amongst this. But I think first and foremost, strength and neuromuscular stimulus. So heavy, slow resistance of some kind. That can be a squat. That could be a Bulgarian split squat. That can be a calf raise. Incorporate something that is heavy, and you can change it by the day depending on what you want to work on, and if you're doing this 3 times a week or so, that's perfect. You just touch a little something each time. And so that's some kind of heavy, slow resistance exercise, really load the tendon, really get a big neuromuscular response there. Second is working on that, that propulsion that Matt was talking about, and that springiness as well. So some kind of a plyo, whether that be 2 leg, single leg, side to side, you can have fun with this. Even if you wanted to do, some people in some cultures will do skipping laps, where they'll literally just skip around a field, and that will be that's their plyos for the day. And then a couple of jumps and springs, because a skip is a plyo, right? You're springing off that tendon. It may not be a fancy big formulaic thing, but just the literal act of doing it, you are springing off of it. So heavy, slow resistance, a plyo of some kind. And my third one, I'm still a fan of both frontal and transverse plane stability. I like to incorporate it in some way or some capacity. And one way, depending on the capabilities of the individual, these can vary widely. But when we look at frontal plane, basically being your kind of side to side motion there, that's going to be working your hip abductors. That's going to be working some of your core musculature to kind of keep you from doing too much side to side or dropping movements. I like side planks, especially with side planks with lifts, if you can. You're going to incorporate a little bit of upper body stability as well in there. You're going to get that entire lateral core and oblique. You're going to hit your hip abductors on both sides. One's got to hold you up and the other one's got to lift up, right? So you're kind of hitting a lot of things at the same time there. If you can't do that, you just break it up in some components, whether it's a side lying abduction, side plank. You just play around with different things. And then the other one would be the, transverse plane. So getting some kind of a rotatory motion on that hip, because we do have to stabilize every single step when we do that. I like doing airplanes for that, where you're kind of going single leg Romanian deadlift base position. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, if you are standing on 2 feet and you're just looking straight forward, you lift one leg up, you keep your chest upright, neutral spine. Nate's going to demonstrate. I love this. Oh, wait, is he demonstrating? Kind of. Yeah.
Kind of. What do you want me to do? Is that it?
Yeah. Single leg Romanian deadlift. Yeah. Don't unplug yourself. We have a slight lag on the video there. Hey, there we go. Yep. So you're doing a hip hinge. So you have a very slight bend in your knee. You're not going super deep into it, but you're folding at the hip and keeping a neutral spine. And now you're getting an elongation of that entire posterior chain. So you are working your glutes and hamstrings as well. And then now you're rotating at your pelvis and kind of doing a tilt. That's the airplane part of this. And now you're hitting those deep hip rotators, and you're going in and you're going out. And it's surprisingly hard to do, especially if you aren't holding on to something. So you could even just do a couple rounds of 5. Boom. There you go. You got some work in.
Yeah.
So again, 3 categories. Choose a little bit of whatever you want in those 3 categories. It's more than 3 exercises, but it's
3 categories. I love it.
3 categories.
Matt, what were you going to say?
I just gave that exercise to a patient who is 86, and she is doing phenomenal. She's a U.S. pro cyclist who's getting into hiking and was having a little bit of symptoms in her knee that actually was referred from her hip. And she is doing awesome and just reminds me every time of like, you meet the individual where they're at. It's just for all the clinicians out there, all the people out there that might be going through something, or make sure that whoever you're working with is meeting you where you're at, not stereotyping you.
100%.
Oh, it's weighted. That goes weighted, by the way, because doing them without weight is too easy for her.
Amazing. Well, it's funny. We did not tell each other what our categories were going to be, but as David said, we definitely think similarly on some of these things. Before I give my categories or my specific exercises, I think my leading philosophy on this is the best, strength training routine is the one that you actually do. So yes, I don't care what it is. If you're doing something, it's better than nothing. And the reason I say that is in part due to a study that came out in 2024 where and it's not a perfect study, but they had a couple different groups. One group, they gave exercises for proximal muscles. One, they gave it for kind of like calf and foot. And then another one, they had like a stretching program. And the only group that had decrease in injury prevalence or like incidence within the study was a prospective study. The only people who had a decreased injury risk were the ones who did proximal muscle stuff. But not everybody who did it. It was only the high compliance folks in that group. So once you weren't in a high compliance, which meant doing it greater than 80% of the time, it didn't make any difference in your injury risk. And I think my purpose for myself, for a lot of the runners that I work with, the purpose of strength training is, again, to keep you running and also running well, but ultimately keep you running. Because if you're consistent with your running, that's going to be your best performance enhancer. It's just being consistent. So like I said, the best program is the one that you actually do. In that realm, it's good to keep it simple. I like that we have 3 categories. Mine are very simple. I won't belabor them much. One is a heavy, slow resistance type exercise, primarily hitting some of these proximal muscles. So in my mind, that would be like a Bulgarian split squat that eventually gets loaded. However, if you have not done strength training, in my opinion, you should do body weight for like 4 to 6 weeks. Let your neuromuscular system catch up, or like super light weights don't actually go to failure yet. Like let your body catch up because it really taxes your musculoskeletal system in a new way. So I would say if you have not strength trained regularly, give yourself 4 to 6 weeks of no to very lightweight, and then figure out what your one rep max is and start jumping into that stuff. The second category, because the calf is so vital for propulsion, I also had like a weighted calf raise in there. Pretty simple. Just get it loaded and get some calf raises in. And then the third one is some sort of plyometric. The one that I had was just a double leg off a box, hit the ground and jump, and just have kind of that reflexive jump. But you could have it be whatever you want. Some kind of jump, some sort of heavy proximal muscle work, and then something for your calf. So pretty similar between all of us, which is in some ways either we just live in our own little echo chamber, but I also think we're grounded in the science and the research behind it. And it's cool when it validates itself in this way, if that's the right word. Not being too researchy right now. So thank you all for joining us for this conversation. Do you have anything else you want to add, Matt or David, before we shut it down?
Do you know what the record is for the most like game clinching shots are in a playoff run? Because Tyrese Halliburton is on one right now.
Does he have like 6 or 7 this playoffs? So time stamping this. Pacers are playing in game 2 of the NBA Finals right now. I don't even know the score. Don't tell me, David, because
I don't either.
I'm gonna pull it up and watch it delayed.
Right now. We're on the podcast. I don't have nothing on right now. So.
Yeah, he's insane. If he was less annoying, I would.
Why is
I would
he annoying though? Like,
because he beats the Bucks. That's the main reason. If I'm being honest, and then the second thing,
it's just getting personal.
It is 100%. I'm 100% biased against Tyrese Halliburton, but he likes to smack talk. He does this little choking thing, and he's just kind of annoying. But mainly because he beats the Bucks, and because I like the Bucks, and it's all in fun.
I feel like it's only because like no one talks about Indiana, and then it's like, oh, here we are, Indiana's here, and they're not going away. So it's like,
yeah, No, I don't know.
I feel like it's validated. I feel like it's validated.
You guys, I'm sweating through my shirt right now.
You want us to let's wrap this up. Plus, people don't want to hear us talk about the NBA. Thank you all for joining us for this conversation. If there are tons of types of exercises we did not talk about today, if there are things that you've loved doing, you can drop them in the comments or send us a message. If you got further questions about this, don't feel afraid to email us at doctorsofrunning@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us at the roundtable. We'll talk to you next time.